Some big SEC names making the PFF Preseason All-America list, but they got it wrong at quarterback. We'll run through the list.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, we're going to get into this. Pro Football Focus putting out their preseason All-America list for the 2025 season. But first, wanted to pass along a quick note. Was at a conference in Chicago a couple days ago and had a chance to hear a panel with Burke Mangus, the head of ESPN programming. And he was asked a couple questions about, programming and how they select what games go on what channels and that sort of thing. And a pretty good compliment he gave the SEC. He said on this panel that the SEC is so good, it is now hard to separate what is the best game of the week. He was kind of talking about how CBS for so many years had at 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern time slot to put the premier prime SEC game of the week in that slot. And he said now that ABC, Disney, SEC Network, they all own all the rights to all the SEC games. He said, a lot of times, ABC has that double or triple header formula. He said a lot of weeks, the 11 a.m. game or the 2 p.m. game is just as good as the night game in the SEC. So it was kind of interesting just to hear that from the lead decision maker in, when it comes to ESPN programming on what games get put on what networks at what time. He, was a big tribute to the SEC. He also talked about, why was CBS doing that for years, putting the premier game at 2:30, 3:30 Eastern, like put it at night. Like night is when and obviously CBS had a couple of night game slots, but obviously with ESPN having the rights now to all the games, they can put the premier games, the big SEC game of the night on ABC. They can put another big ESPN game that night on ESPN. They could put another great game in that 2 o'clock slot, the 11 a.m. slot. I mean, they just have a lot of flexibility, but just thought it was kind of interesting to hear from the horse's mouth saying, yeah, look, there's no clear cut. You look at the SEC, when you get into the season, there are weeks where there's not one clear cut game of the week. There are multiple games of the week with multiple ranked unranked opponents and obviously upsets happening every single week in the conference. So just wanted to pass that along to you guys. All right, let's dive into it as the SEC landed 12 stars on their Pro Football Focus preseason All-America list for the 2025 season. And look, SEC superiority, it's it's a common theme when we see these preseason All-America lists. So 12 of the conference's elite players making the list. I'll run through what they had to say, but first off, the first thing that just caught my eye, one, they only put one running back on the list, and it's hard to pick just one running back, but it was not from the SEC. It was Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love. That's fine. I've heard many people say they think he's the best running back in the country. Okay, I'll roll with that. It is what it is. But the quarterback is what kind of got in my craw. They put Cade Klubnik from Clemson in that number one spot, and it just kind of bugs me because, I don't know, let's go poll a bunch of people across the country. Do a lot of folks think that Cade Klubnik is hands down the best quarterback in the country? And I get a Pro Football Focus. They use the advanced metrics in determining a lot of this. And here's what they say. They say there might not be a more improved quarterback in college football than Klubnik this past season. Obviously, from what he was in 2023 to what he did in 2024. Only Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders threw more touchdowns than him. And those were guys that were projected, to go high in the draft. So it is what it is, but I kind of feel like if you want to go with numbers and proven, I feel like Garrett Nussmeier from LSU has a case. And, of course, if you want to go with upside and trajectory, Arch Manning from Texas could be on this list, I think. Lenore Sellers, you can make an argument for. So it is what it is, but I don't know. Just seeing one quarterback on that list, and it being Cade Klubnik from Clemson, just kind of, rubbing the wrong way. But let's run through the rest of the list of the SEC names that did make the list. So wide receiver, they have got Ryan Williams from Alabama. And here's what they write. While it wasn't the greatest true freshman receiver season of all time, like Jeremiah Smith had, Williams was still incredible in his first year of college football. The former top 5 recruits, 865 yards receiving, weren't just second to Jeremiah Smith among FBS true freshmen. They are second over the last 3 seasons. Williams also led all true freshmen this past season with 170 receiving yards after contact, while trailing only Jeremiah Smith in yards after the catch, receiving touchdowns, and yards per route run. He has elite speed, 6 foot tall, 175 pounds, was just 17 years old for all of his freshman season. So expect big things out of Ryan Williams in year 2 in Tuscaloosa. Coming at the tight end spot, they've got Eli Stowers at Vanderbilt. He was once a 4-star quarterback recruit, made the transition to tight end. No returning tight end in college football has been as valuable as he has over the last 2 seasons. Obviously, 2 years ago at New Mexico State, was an elite athlete, transferred into Vandy, placed him above the 99th percentile in PFF's game athleticism score metric. That movement ability makes him especially dangerous after the catch. Stowers was 3rd among Power 4 tight ends with 13 forced missed tackles and 4th in yards after the catch this past season. So big-time weapon there back for Diego Pavia. And got to think Eli Stowers is going to make a lot of those preseason, All-America tight end or All-SEC tight end watch lists. All right, offensive line is really where the SEC dominates on this list. At left tackle, you got Caden Proctor from Alabama, who a lot of people are projecting as a top 10 pick in the 2026 NFL draft. At left guard, they've got Caden Green from Mizzou, obviously started his career at Oklahoma, transferred into Mizzou, became a more well-rounded player. At center, Jake Slaughter from Florida, as PFF says, the only Power 4 center with an 80-plus grade, both as a pass rusher and a run blocker. He expects to be a very high NFL draft pick and did a great job last year against a murderer's row of defensive tackles, as they point out: Walter Nolan, Alfred Collins, Shamar Turner, Omar Norman Lott, Deion Walker. He held his own. His 85.8 grade in PFF since 2023 is among the Power 4 centers in that group. He ranks very high. So Jake Slaughter, no surprise there. And then at right guard, maybe a name not many are familiar with, but Armaj Reed Adams at Texas A&M dominated his first year there among Power 4 guards. His run blocking grade was above the average metric. A powerful player, 6'5", 330 pounds, can excel in any run blocking scheme. And A&M is going to run the football a lot. So that's the offensive side. How about on the defensive side? On the D-line, not many better than Colin Simmons at Texas and Dylan Stewart at South Carolina. Here's what they say about Colin Simmons. His 18.6% pressure rate was a top 15 mark in the nation, and he was no slouch as a run defender either. His elite combination of bend and advanced pass rushing moves, reminiscent of Von Miller. So, Colin Simmons, fantastic freshman year there at Texas. How about Dylan Stewart, the other freshman at South Carolina? They said he's the freakiest athlete the Gamecocks have had at edge since Jadeveon Clowney. And like Clowney, he has the upside of becoming the number 1 overall pick in the draft in the future. Former 5-star recruit, earned a 91.4 pass rush grade as a true freshman. That was tied for 6th among all edges in America. We had him on the show earlier this offseason, Dylan Stewart, poised for another big season at South Carolina. At linebacker, how about the Texas two-step? You got Anthony Hill Jr. at Texas, and then you got Torian York at Texas A&M. Both guys starters, and I think immediate starters, basically, when they got there, it feels like. But tackling machines all over the field. Anthony Hill, Torian York, good picks there from the SEC. Here's what they say about Anthony Hill. They say since 2023, his 32 coverage stops are tied for the most among FBS linebackers, while his 10 sacks and 5 forced fumbles are tied for the most among Power 4 linebackers. He's had 127 plays where he's made first contact on the ball carrier in that same span. Heat-seeking missile, Anthony Hill. How about for Torian York? He has proven the high school rankings wrong. They had him listed as a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, but he has far exceeded that. He leads all returning Power 4 linebackers with 59 run defense stops since 2023. His 122 first contacts on the ball carrier are tied for 4th most among that same group. So 2 really good picks there. In the secondary, just 1 SEC guy. Now, they did have Caleb Downs, the safety at Ohio State, former Alabama safety, but of course, national champion at Ohio State. But Jamad McCoy at Tennessee, they have him listed as one of the 2 corners. They say the current favorite to be the top corner selected in next year's draft. Jamad McCoy was a lockdown player for the Vols after transferring in from Oregon State last year. His 89.6 coverage grade last season, second among returning power 4 corners. All his 4 interceptions were tied for second in that group. Great ball skills with phenomenal movement and ability. Scored a near-perfect 99.9 in Pro Football Focus's game athleticism score metric. Now, again, these metrics aren't everything, guys. I'm just passing this along. Pro Football Focus, they dive deep into the numbers. And that's what they came up with. Finally, Georgia did get a player on the list. It's special teams. Their star punter, Brett Thorson, being named to the list. So what do you think of that list? Again, I just can't give Cade Klubnik the love that they're giving him on, best returning quarterback statistically in the country, whatever. I just don't. I'll have to see it, more of it this year. If he does it, great. Clemson will win a national champion or play for a national championship, make a deep playoff run, whatever. But I'm not that high on Cade Klubnik. One other thing I did want to pass along here when it comes to the NIL situation and the government. Tommy Tuberville, former Auburn head coach, of course, affirmed the incoming arrival of a college sports commission, reportedly being planned by President Donald Trump. Tuberville's the latest to confirm those reports. Remember, there was a report last week that Nick Saban was going to be at the head of the table. Tuberville said Sunday morning on CNN, he said he's got a commission that he's putting together. I've recommended some people to go on it, of course. I've been working on it for 4 years. Nick Saban is going to be involved. And I think NIL is in dire need of restructuring. A lot of elements to the current atmosphere surrounding college sports that people like Tuberville think needs to be remedied. Players making and asking for large amounts of money to play at a specific school, to excessive transferring, less emphasis on high school recruiting and development. Tuberville's hope, he says, is to keep college sports from turning into a professional minor league of sorts. Roster continuity is becoming a lost art, and the allure of money at another school will always be there for the elite players. Again, I still stand in the camp of it's not perfect, but I don't think it's this abject disaster that everybody makes it out to be. Look, for the most part, a lot of rosters have been kept intact. A lot of kids still want to just play for that school in those colors and not just jump and ship because somebody threw some dollars and cents at them. But I get it. They want to get some regulation here, rein it in. We'll see what happens. All right, more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Hey, guys, do you ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? It's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, they're not just a budgeting app. They're a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, your spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you can start building your wealth. And I'm telling you right now, when you start using Monarch Money, you're going to realize just how much money you're spending on stuff like food delivery services, some of these streaming services you may not even realize you're paying for. You're going, oh my God, I'm getting hit up for that every month. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch that will check your finances, track your spending. And you can even plan your long-term goals. Encourage you guys to go check it out. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use our code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. It's going to get you 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money, MONARCH money.com. Use code LOCKEDONCollege and get half off your first year for trying them out. monarchmoney.com. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. I debated starting the show with this because it sparked such a big debate over the weekend, but figured you guys would probably be a little bit more interested in the Pro Football Focus first All-America team for football. But I want to switch gears over to the world of softball. If you guys were not paying attention over the weekend, the SEC softball tournament was being held in Athens, Georgia. Now, if you're not familiar, they rotate every year to a different college campus. It's been at Auburn, it's been at LSU, it's been at Kentucky, it's been all these different places. And it was in Athens this weekend. Well, they had a lot of rain. Well, Oklahoma and Texas A&M were set to play their championship game on Saturday. And it even came out that the weather in Athens, late Friday, the SEC announced a schedule change. They were going to play originally at 5 p.m. Eastern. They moved it up to 1 p.m. Eastern for first pitch on Saturday. But the conference, they anticipated for inclement weather, but the rain just did not cooperate. And the game entered a weather delay before they even had first pitch. And ultimately, they decided that with the weather, they would not have the game would not be played. And they declared Oklahoma and Texas A&M as co-champions. Oklahoma and Texas A&M were the two top seeds in the SEC softball tournament. Both received double byes to the quarterfinals. They both won 2 games to reach the championship. And SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey said in a statement, due to inclement weather now and predicted for the rest of the day, today's championship game will not be played. Again, this was on Saturday. Both Oklahoma and Texas A&M are declared co-champions for the 2025 SEC softball tournament. Congratulations to the Sooners and the Aggies, and best of luck to both teams of the postseason. Of course, with Oklahoma's rich history of softball success, including 4 national championships from 2021 to 2024, fans were not pleased with the SEC's decision. A lot of Oklahoma fans yelled, "Cop out." They don't want to see OU win an outright SEC championship. Other people called it very weak on the part of SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. SEC officials said the decision to cancel the championship game was, quote, made in an abundance of caution for the athletes of both programs as they prepare to travel home before strong storms approach the area later Saturday and begin preparations for the postseason. Look, I get the selection show was set for Sunday evening because a lot of people were like, well, why don't you play Sunday? Well, they everybody wanted to head back and get ready for their selection show watch parties and all that at their home base. So I get that. And look, there was more rain in forecasts in Athens all day Saturday and then into Sunday. But it just feels like there could have been other options. I mean, I even get going, like, this is what I would have preferred. I would have preferred you start the game and you go into multiple weather delays. It would have been a pain. But I think even playing a championship game all day Saturday, broken up by several rain delays, would have been the better option than not playing one at all. Aggies coach Tricia Ford said there's a lot of factors that went into the decision. It hadn't stopped raining all day. It didn't look like we would get a window big enough for us to be able to play the game. So with just the field conditions and everybody being able to get home safely, it was just one of those unfortunate things. Ultimately, the league was the one who made the decision not to play the game. Again, I just think it's cheap. I think it's really, co-champions, great. Like, you didn't play a title game. And again, both teams were fantastic. I wanted to see them play. Like, we wanted to see Oklahoma play Texas A&M and see, the Aggies won the regular season SEC title. And the ironic part is, we'll get to it in a second, with the seeding, A&M had a higher RPI. So when it comes to the national seeds, A&M got the number 1 national seed. Oklahoma was number 2, even despite Oklahoma was the team that received the automatic bid from the conference. So anyway, just kind of interesting how it played out. But on Friday, they did announce, SEC announced their 2025 season awards. Arkansas's Bree Ellis was named Player of the Year. Pitcher of the Year went to Carlin Pickens of Tennessee. And 2 top honors went to Oklahoma in their first year of SEC play. Their pitcher, Sam Landry, was named Newcomer of the Year. And Patty Gasso was named SEC Coach of the Year. Tori Edwards of LSU was named the Freshman of the Year. So later Sunday evening, we got the brackets announced. And for the first time in program history, Texas A&M softball received the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Co-SEC champions, A&M 1 and Oklahoma 2, as far as top seeds go. But all top 4 seeds in the NCAA tournament coming from the SEC, and the SEC with 7 of the top 8 national seeds. You have A&M at 1, Oklahoma 2, Florida, Arkansas, Texas, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Florida State, the only non-SEC team that made it into the top 8 national seed. That means in softball, as long as these teams hold serve in the regionals, we're going to have a lot of SEC teams playing in the super regionals. In fact, 14 SEC softball teams made it into the NCAA tournament. Mizzou was the only team not to get in. And if you're not aware, Vandy does not have a team. So 14 of the 15 SEC teams made it into the NCAA tournament. And here's how the field shakes up. Just kind of looking at potential matchups. We could see Florida play Georgia in the super regional. We could get Kentucky at Texas in the super regional. We could get LSU versus Tennessee in a super regional. That would be a lot of fun. We could get Alabama against Oklahoma in a super regional. That would be really tough for Alabama. They got the toughest draw, being as the 15 top seed, because you're going to have to go play at Oklahoma. That's your reward. I think we could see what Ole Miss take on Arkansas in a super. We could get Auburn against Mississippi State. Again, neither of those teams are hosting, so that would be very difficult. And then we got South Carolina, we got Texas A&M on the other side of the bracket. So anyway, just sets up where we could get a lot of SEC flavor into the Women's College World Series. So we'll see how that shakes out. But again, just kind of one of those things. And look, I like Greg Sankey overall, a lot of decisions they make, but every now and then they make one that's a little bit of a head scratcher, and you go, I get the weather was bad, but find a way to figure it out to play a game. I mean, some people even suggested move it to a neutral site. Was there somewhere else? You knew the weather forecast all week. You knew it was bad weather. You're kind of going, well, we're hosting in Athens where there's no roof. I mean, also, if it's not thunder and lightning, could you just say we're going to play in some light rain? It's not that big of a deal. Anyway, I digress. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, our final segment here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And wanted to get to our SEC baseball recap from the weekend. It was a fun weekend. By the way, we have one more weekend to go in SEC baseball. It's coming this weekend, and then we're into the SEC tournament in Hoover, and then we're into postseason play for baseball. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But how about we'll just take a look at the standings here. But lowly Mizzou sweeping Texas A&M in College Station over the weekend. Now, just a week ago, the Aggies picked up a big-time SEC series win over LSU, positioning them well to be in a spot to make postseason play. But in a shocking weekend, Mizzou baseball not only beats A&M, they get a clean sweep of the Aggies and absolutely dominated them in the final two games. They out-hit A&M 38-11 in the series. Mizzou won 9-6, 4-1, and 10-1. And barring a surprise, A&M is going to end up being the first preseason number one team to not even make the NCAA tournament in at least the last 35 years. That is unbelievable. But with the sweep, Texas A&M, they fall to 27-23 overall. Their resume does not look very good. At 10-17 in conference play, traditionally 13 regular season wins are needed to make the NCAA tournament. And they got to go play on the road in Athens this weekend against Georgia. The Mizzou sweep caused A&M's RPI to plummet 23 spots to number 58, according to WarrenNolan.com. Mizzou has an RPI of 135, meaning all three losses to Mizzou are quad 4 for resume purposes for Texas A&M. An absolutely awful weekend. I was saying on Friday, did an interview, I thought A&M was going to go in there and sweep Mizzou, which they should have. Like, that's what should have happened. A&M's been playing much better baseball the last few weeks. But Michael Early, man, rookie coaching blunders. And Mizzou, they entered the weekend having gone 0-24 in SEC play. I mean, it was literally being discussed that Mizzou wasn't going to win an SEC game. And then they pull off the win on Friday. You're like, oh, that's a monster win for Mizzou. But not just the Friday win. They come back and win all three. Absolutely crazy to see what transpired. But for A&M, and that large bid to the NCAA tournament currently looks unlikely to happen. Barring a miracle, they're going to have to go in there and find a way to sweep Georgia, which I don't know. Just don't see that happening. All right. Elsewhere in the conference, Alabama took 2 out of 3 at home against top 10 Georgia. So I guess maybe Georgia is not playing their best, but Alabama trying to finish their season strong. They take 2 out of 3 against Georgia. That was big. But they're going to finish with a road trip at Florida. That's going to be tough. For Georgia, they had won 7 games in a row before losing these last 2 to Bama. The Bulldogs host A&M this weekend, and Georgia is still in play for a national seed. How about Kentucky? They swept top 20 Oklahoma in Lexington. Tough series loss for OU. They have lost 6 of their last 8 games. They're going to host Texas this weekend. Meanwhile, Kentucky, Nick Mingione's Wildcats, Kentucky is up to 13 wins in the SEC with still a weekend to play. So they appear in good shape. That, coming into the weekend, it was like, yeah, Kentucky might not be in, but they look very much in now. LSU, they took 2 out of 3 against Arkansas and Baton Rouge. It was a fun battle of 2 top 10 teams. LSU won game 1 Friday night, a game that was delayed by weather and concluded in extra innings after 1 a.m. And then LSU comes back to run rule Arkansas on Saturday before dropping game 3 on Sunday. So both LSU and Arkansas still looking in pretty strong spots to solidify top 8 seeds. Florida, they won a big series, taking 2 out of 3 against Texas in Austin. After a rough start to the season for Florida, that is now 5 straight SEC series wins for Kevin O'Sullivan's crew. And Texas, who was just a couple weeks ago number 1 in the country, swept Texas A&M a couple weeks ago. They got swept by Arkansas last week, and now they dropped 2 out of 3 against Florida. A big series, weekend series at Oklahoma this weekend for the Longhorns. But that's 5 of your last 6 losses in the SEC. Florida, they host Alabama coming up next. Vanderbilt, they took 2 out of 3 against Tennessee in Knoxville. Man, the Vols have lost 4 straight SEC series, 5 of their last 6 in the conference. Vandy, they have now won back-to-back weekends against Alabama and Tennessee. Next up, they will host Kentucky. The Vols travel at Arkansas. And man, the reigning national champs not looking like the reigning national champs. They have just shot themselves in the foot here. Not played clean baseball the last couple weeks. Shout out to Mississippi State. They go in and take 2 out of 3 against top 25 Ole Miss. The Bulldogs fired Coach Chris Lemonis just a couple weeks ago. They win the series and they keep their postseason hopes alive, while Ole Miss is virtually a regional shoe-in. The Rebels' chances at hosting were lessened with the series loss to Mississippi State. But since firing head coach Chris Lemonis amid what had been a lackluster season, Mississippi State is 6-1 and trending in the right direction with 1 week to go. Next weekend, they will play their final SEC series as Ole Miss will host number 8 Auburn, and Mississippi State will head to Mizzou, who was winless in conference play. But I saw this, I think this was on Friday night. They said there were 14,468 fans at Dudy Noble. It was the 7th largest crowd in NCAA history. Bulldogs have the top 22 crowds all time. Absolutely insane for a team that, fired their coach and thought, oh, they're out. Mississippi State, they have a pulse. Keeping those postseason hopes alive. And then lastly, Auburn, they swept South Carolina in Columbia. Auburn they won 24-2, 11-10, and 11-3. Series win marks 6 straight for the Tigers over the Gamecocks dating back to 2015. And that's now 3 straight SEC series wins for Butch Thompson's crew. Quite a turnaround for Auburn after they missed the postseason last year. Remember, they made it 2 straight seasons of making the postseason prior to that, including a trip to Omaha in 2022. But big series win sweep there for Auburn. I get it. South Carolina stinks, but you took out the trash, and Auburn's playing much better baseball. That is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Guys, have a great Monday. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Talk more football and more coming up next.